Okay, so I've probably frightened you to death with maths, not to worry about things at the moment. I just want you to understand that numbers and strings are completely different and we have to be very careful how we use them. But that will come with practice and experience. The next thing I want to show you is really where programming takes off. It's called variables. We used them a lot last year. We used them with Scratch earlier in the year. So when you were programming your rocket, you were talking in terms of speed, x velocity. They're all variables, and we use them constantly in programs. So let me take you through what a variable is. A variable is a word. It can be any word that you want. It can be a word that makes sense, a word that doesn't even make sense. So I could use ASDEFG as we used before. That is a variable, but I need to give it some sort of value. Now the value I can give it can be anything. It can be a string, or it can be a number. At the moment I've got a string, and if I want to show what that value is, I just need to print it. So it will always tell me what is inside of it. So this is the name of the variable and this is the contents of the variable, and I'm just printing them out. So if I run this program, you'll see it should just say hello, and I can change whatever I put in there to anything that I want and run my program. Same variable, printing the same variable, anything that I want. The point of it being called variable is because it varies, it changes. Now we can have string variables, this is a string variable, or we can have a number variable. So if I put 23.45 in there, and then run my program, it's going to print out 23.5. And even if I put maths in there, what is 2 plus 5? The answer should be 7. So I'm expecting that to hold the value 7. So if I run the program again, 7. So we didn't change the variable name. We kept it the same. We just changed what went inside the variable. Whereas the variable name that I want to talk about, that really isn't very good. ASDEFG makes no sense whatsoever. If I had a program with all that in, I think I would quickly give up. Normally we like to give variables names that mean something. In fact, mean roughly what the contents are. So if I was to give this a proper name, I would probably call it 7, because 2 plus 5 equals 7, and then print out 7. So when I run my program now, it just prints 7. But I've now given my variable name something really, really useful. Let's think about this one. If I've got 2 plus 5 is 7, what do you think is going to happen if I print 7 times 2? Let's run it and see. 14. That was pretty impressive. Because we've used a word which means something, we can start sort of doing maths with it. Let's try this one. Let's try 2 equals the number 2. And instead of doing 7 times 2, just do 7 times 2. And run that. 14 again. So if we are careful with the names we give to our variables, we can make some sense out of our programming. It doesn't need to be just wrapped up in maths or some strange code that you can't understand. We can actually use English words to make sense out of what we're doing. But there are some rules. So let me go over 1 or 2 of the rules that we use. So number 1, a variable name cannot contain spaces. So if I was to type my height to be a variable name, so that could store what my height was. Because it's got a space in, it's not going to be very happy and it's going to give us an error. There we go. It said I read up to the point where you got my space, but I've got an error here. We cannot have spaces in our variable names. So we take the space out, that'll be fine. Apart from the fact that it doesn't know what my height is. There you go, my height is not defined. That's easily fixed. My height equals 154. Print out what my height is. 154. So we can't have spaces. Another thing we can't have is numbers beginning. So if I got something like first, that's a 1 there, first attempt, it's not going to like the number on the front. I can't start variable names with a number. There you go, you've made a spelling mistake. So it doesn't understand or won't allow you to start variables with a number. So let's try this one. Second attempt. Still won't like it. Starts with a number and it will tell me so. So that's two things I can't do. Have spaces or start with a number. Sometimes I like my variables to be very descriptive. So this is a very descriptive variable that is set to 2. There we go. And I can actually copy that variable and print it out, and it should print 2. There we go, it's printed 2 quite nicely. The problem is that I'm using lots of words to describe what my contents are. And, well, you look at it, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. This is fine, it's a good variable name. One way around it would be to put underscores between every single letter. And then it starts to become more readable. Okay, so that's okay. Remember, I can't use spaces, so I'm using an underscore to sort of simulate a space. So if I copy that, paste it over that, and run my program, it should give me 2. And there we go. That's fine. The thing is, I'm not very keen on this as a way of setting up variables that contain more than one word. My method would be, or my preferred method would be, for every new word, start it with a capital. And this has got a particular name in computing that you might like to look up in a second, called camel case. And the reason why it's called camel case is because the first letter is of a variable is always a lowercase letter. So I've got a lowercase t to begin with, then every new word starts with an uppercase letter, so it looks like the humps of a camel. So it's called camel case. There's lots of different cases that you can use. or different ways of doing it. So if I run my program again and click OK, it comes up with 2. So this is my preferred method. Doesn't mean you have to use it. You could use the underscores. And if we take a look online again at camel case, there you go. And you can read that in your own time. It's just one way, one style for using your variables. And here's some good examples here. iPhone, eBay, they're all in camel case. The reason why we do this is because if we make mistakes in our programs, particularly in the variables, we can quickly get to see where the variables are because we know how we are laying out our work. So if all of a sudden I've got something that doesn't work, okay, so I've just changed that there for a lowercase, try and run it and it's going to crash because actually, yeah, it doesn't understand it. They are 2 different things. I've set that up to be 2 and I'm trying to print out something that I never set to anything at all. This is a different variable, apples and pears. So that's the reason. It just helps us spot mistakes a little quicker when we're trying to debug our programs. It's a well-known version, it's used throughout, and it's my preferred method. You don't have to use it. You could use underscores, that would be fine, or you could even use what we call title case or sentence case, where every word is capitalized. But I really don't prefer that, and the reason that I don't prefer that one will come in later when you're probably doing A-level or even degree work, that there's a reason for that. So that's taking a look at variables and the start of variables. Once we understand variables, then we can start having fun with programming.